Gonna hit the content warning on this one. It's gonna get very emotional. And we have a few small stories to do afterwards, but pretty much this is the rest of the show. So if you're not in the mood to watch this, I totally understand. I'd tell you to check back in. If you Matt Walsh talking about Mario, but that one's also short.
Provided to me.
We're gonna go to the Waukesha. I'm saying it wrong in Waukesha. Parade killer trial. A verdict was reached today by the jury. I'm gonna take you through the final moments of the trial. We're going to see the verdict read. We're going to see Darrell Brooks' closing statements. We're going to hear from the families after the verdict was read. First thing that needs to be addressed was somebody put a post on Reddit saying that they were one of the jurors in the trial, and the judge had to address this. His opening statement was not convincing. We did a summation of this trial last week, so we're going to do the wrap up here tonight. The first thing that's going to be addressed is a so-called juror's Reddit post. The judge is going to have to address that before we get to closing arguments.
Which was an email, and then the attachment, which is a color.
I'm not high enough for this shit.
Looks like the person took a screenshot. In that the anonymous post claimed to be a member of the jury on the case, and here are my thoughts on the trial and on this subreddit.
So, Girl of the Gray, the learn from it thing, that's kind of the thing, is like, I don't really feel like this is a trial where we're learning anything. Me covering this is very exploitative. I feel like I've done a good job of delivering information so far in this show. This particular piece feels exploitative to me. But I have a morbid curiosity, and I like watching these kinds of videos, so we're going to watch it together.
And apparently, again, it's a subreddit called Justice for Darrell. All those, Justice, the number 4, and Darrell, all, no spaces. I then had contact with Captain Dussault, advised him that this should be investigated, and basically turned over the matter to law enforcement for a full investigation. At this point, or at that point, I made a determination based upon my review of the information that I would not stop what was happening in terms of the trial with the instructions to the jury and ultimately the closing arguments, and then turning the case over to the jury for deliberations. And of course, I am concerned about the integrity of these proceedings, and I will take whatever action that I deem appropriate once a full investigation is done. But at this point, there is no, I would say, credible information that this is in fact a member of the jury. But I will leave that for law enforcement to determine, and of course, if need be.
And I will say, thus far, she has done a fantastic job. I think the judge has done a great job in this case. I watched several hours.
Whether any
at this point
questioning of the jurors at that point is warranted. So that's the information I wanted to provide. Again, copies of this information will be provided to the parties, and there is a full investigation underway by the Sheriff's Department. I have no further information about it at this time. I will not be the judge that will further be reviewing it in terms of any requests related to that investigation. I will simply be handling whether any requests as relates to this case in particular. And I hope we have the copies for the parties. And we'll provide those. Go ahead.
I'm making sure you was
Go ahead.
first. What is this?
Yeah.
All I can tell you, sir, is that there is apparently on the internet, on a site, or maybe it's an application, I'm not entirely sure, called Reddit. There's a subreddit.
Yeah, she doesn't know what Reddit is.
that is entitled Justice for Darrell, and it was on that subreddit that someone wrote an anonymous post claiming to be one of the jurors. That, of course, would be a violation of the rules that I set up for the jurors, which is why I turned over the information to law enforcement so they could make a full...
For those of you who are unaware, Brooks is a sovereign citizen type. He is representing himself.
I'm confused.
At this point, sir, I'm providing the information. I trust that the parties will review it, and if a party believes that any request needs to be made of this court, then an appropriate request will be made. But at this point, I'm just advising the parties of the information that I have. And I will add this. I will, of course, it's important that the results of any investigation be turned over to the parties. I don't know how long that will take, but that is also my direction. That was really the only direction I gave to law enforcement, is that the results of the investigation that be turned over to the parties.
RB coming onto the judge in the chat.
You live in sexual anarchy.
Just found out about this morning?
Yes, the email that was sent to the clerk of court was received at 9:10 a.m. And then that email and the attachment, I'm aware of a second email that was sent to our clerk of court at 10:02 a.m. And I think when we stepped off the bench following the case being given to the jury, I was advised that other emails had been received throughout the court system, and I simply said, obviously that information needs to go to law enforcement. I haven't seen it, haven't reviewed it, but any person who works in the clerk of court's office who has received an email, that email about this topic will be forwarded to the Sheriff's Department. Their forensic unit is handling the investigation, to my understanding. Attorney Upper, did you have a question or something to state?
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to state for the record that I have also received similar emails at my office this afternoon. They were sent not to me directly, but to the District Attorney's Office website. And
basically, that's what we learned. They're calling in law enforcement to investigate the Reddit post. If it turns out to be a juror, they have no reason to believe it is a juror at this time. If it turns out it is a juror, there will be appropriate questioning. Move on to closing arguments. This from Darrell Brooks himself.
Right present, where you will give the closing argument from the other courtroom. And if you continue in a blatant disregard of the requirement that
they do have, he has been rather uncooperative throughout this entire thing. They have another room set up with video so that they can take him in there and mute him and proceed on with court proceedings if he gets rowdy. So that is what she is referring to. But I do believe he gives something akin to his opening statement for his closing statement.
Reference in any way jury nullification, I may make that final determination outside the presence of the jury.
I object to that, Your Honor.
All right, with that, let's bring the jury out.
For the record, may I respectfully request the legal reconsideration of your ruling? So is that a tacit agreement that you don't have to answer my objection, Your Honor?
I decline to reconsider.
I reject that ruling and take exception to that ruling, Your Honor.
Noted for the record.
For the record, may I request a legal or factual basis for your ruling, Your Honor?
Denied.
For the record, may I respectfully request a written judicial finding of facts and conclusion of law on this issue, Your Honor?
Denied.
For the record, may I respectfully move for interlocutory declaratory appeal on this matter?
I'm not the court to address that.
For the record, may I move to stay these proceedings until this instant matter is adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction, which this court has no subject matter jurisdiction.
Denied.
Under
The jury's
based on
coming
what
in.
law or
All
fact?
rise for the jury, please.
Based on what law or fact?
She's had to tell him multiple times she can't educate him on the
Going
law.
to
That is not
inform the
her
jury of the
position.
power they deserve to know.
Depending on what her mindset is, this trial could be a blessing for her because this is very high profile. This is a career maker.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
The jury was just seated.
Go ahead, Mr. Brooks, your closing argument, please.
Good afternoon. It's been a long day. First off, I'd just like to start by letting you guys know that it's a lot of information that you guys should be privy to, I believe. And one
Great.
thing
Good
that I
evening.
believe that you have not been privy to is the truth of your rights and your duties, being the jury.
The
fact
duty.
that you and you alone have the power. Not
No, they're aware of that, dude.
well-prepared DAs with well-prepared and clearly rehearsed speeches and exhibits and a lot of theatrics.
Buddy, you should have rehearsed.
Frankly, not the judge. You and you alone have the power. You and you alone decide what is truth and what isn't truth.
He has watched some Law and Order.
Informed that you have the power to nullify any law that you don't agree with.
Objection, move to strike the statement.
Sustain.
Objection.
I will strike from the record.
That sovereign citizen shit.
Statement made by the defendant. The jury will
Which is-
disregard it.
Which is clearly what I've been saying. I believe that not only is it fair, but it's essential that you be privy to all knowledge, not knowledge that certain people feel that you should hear and shouldn't hear, disguised under the color of law. The fact of the matter is,
Her
just like
face.
I did with my opening statements, I don't have a well-prepared or rehearsed speech. I didn't look in the mirror and say certain points to myself over and over again to make sure I have them right or anything like that. I've chosen to speak from the heart in my opening statements, and now I'm going to speak from the heart. What you won't hear me do is argue facts. And the reason you won't hear me argue facts is because I believe that it takes away from what should be recognized. The tragedy of this event. It should be recognized. Trying to argue facts of this, facts of that, I'm not going to waste your time doing that. It's a little emotional. I apologize for the long pause. It's hard to keep everything together emotionally. And honestly, I don't believe that I have any more tears left. It's been a hard year.
And apparently they went through a whole process and deemed him competent to be able to defend himself.
And that should not be lost on anyone. It shouldn't be taken away. I said it before and I'll say it again. It's a lot of people that are healing, that are attempting to heal.
The people called him a space cowboy. What's up, my friend?
That opens the door to talk about forgiveness for a little bit. With every healing process, there comes a forgiving process.
Because this dude's a joker, and I'm a token.
It's not an easy thing for anyone.
I'm
Which
not
you've
high
been
enough for
hearing
this shit.
from the prosecution, and not to take anything away from them, but let's call it what it is. You've been hearing a lot of rerun. Same things over and over and over. No different than when...
Yes, you've been saying the same things over and over and over.
Like when you first hear it. But they play it so much that eventually you start saying the words to yourself before you even realize it. And then you sit and you go, I hate that song. Why am I singing it?
Just for the record, I don't hate Steve Miller Band.
Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Attempting to make things stick in your head that simply aren't true. Why do I say, what am I saying?
What are you saying?
I say, look at the testimony. You know, the
Okay,
thing from
okay, if the dude's
prosecution.
argument is he was running from the cops, he didn't mean to run people over, this wasn't a malicious act, this wasn't premeditated, and you should show lenience because of that. I did not mean to kill these people, this is a horrific accident, but I apologize for my actions, I do deserve time, I throw myself at the mercy of the court. If that is your argument, you have failed miserably at making it. You have failed miserably, sir.
Here has been intent.
And the sovereign citizen thing comes into it as well, because he doesn't believe our laws apply to him, that this court is even valid. But that's a whole other can of worms that, like, it's hard to explain to people in a short, condensed amount of time.
We all know what's been said. We all know the picture that's been painted.
He's also done a really bad job at making the sovereign citizen argument that the laws aren't valid.
Said themselves. How can you look in somebody's head and say, this is what they intended to do? You know, for a year, I've sat and gone through this. Feeling so powerless. Letting other people run with the narratives. Sitting back helpless while other people paint a picture that has zero truth. Zero.
No. You
about healing myself.
You ran a bunch of people over, killed 6 people.
A lot of it, there's no need to get into. I myself in my own life have had to do a lot of healing. As a man with children myself. I find it hard to believe that anyone who's really had conversations with me, spent time around me, would think for 1 second that this is an intentional act.
Yes, he was charged with 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide.
I've never heard of someone intentionally trying to hurt someone while attempting to blow their horn. While attempting to alert people of their presence.
Buddy, the road was closed.
More information that I believe that you should have been privy to. And I'm sure that the prosecution will beg to differ. But the fact of the matter is, the vehicle in question,
Well, there were 76 counts all in total. There were like 60 counts of reckless endangerment.
The vehicle in question, actually 2008, 2009, and 2010 of that model was in fact recalled.
Objection, misstatement of the facts, facts not in evidence.
Was in fact-
Improper argument, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Was in fact recalled.
He's saying that his vehicle, which I have a picture of him from his rap music video in front of, this is the murder weapon in the parade. Apparently he's saying it was under recall.
Was in fact a class action lawsuit against Ford
Objection,
for those
facts not in
models,
evidence,
for
Your
those
Honor.
model vehicles.
Sustained. The juror will disregard.
Information that you should have been privy to, that you weren't allowed to be privy to. Why? I don't know.
Because it wasn't true, apparently.
That information, malfunctioning throttle bodies,
Mr. Brooks, move on.
it's information that you should have been privy
Igloo,
to.
good evening.
Vehicles that malfunction and accelerate not being able to be stopped.
Objection, that is.
It's
completely
information,
inaccurate,
it's
Your Honor.
information.
Objection. Hold on. Go ahead.
Move to strike statements by
Sorry
Mr.
for the
Brooks.
interruption.
They are facts not in evidence, Your Honor, and it's a complete misstatement.
Sustained. Strike
How's it a
the-
misstatement when I have the information?
Mr. Brooks, move on.
This is information that I feel like you needed to know. You should have known. Information that was
Indeed, I
taken
agree.
away from you. Why? To prove a case? Information that you definitely should have been privy to.
This is the trial of the Waukesha
DA says
parade killer. He's a sovereign citizen.
the defendant
He
has
is representing
utter
himself.
disregard for human life. Utter disregard for human life.
Yes, you have an utter disregard for human life.
Not realizing that they're talking about someone that has children. Talking about someone that watched their children come out of the womb and be born into this world, cut the umbilical cord, held them before their mom even did. Moments that I'll never forget. And yet they say utter disregard for human life.
Dude, I'm sure there are plenty of killers that had kids.
They made reference to a rage, as if they were, or if this particular DA was right there, standing right there, as if this DA is a psychiatrist. I said to myself,
I seriously can't believe a psychiatrist ruled you competent to stand trial and represent yourself.
how can you characterize that? How can you have the audacity to diagnose what someone's brain is? Where is that?
RB, I'm not sure, but I think I read that he accelerated into the parade.
DA makes references to blocks of no one being injured, but then says it's intentional. You add that up with the supposed rage, the supposed intent to harm and kill, and it doesn't kick in until well within blocks. And maybe it's just me, but I would.
All right, we've watched about 20 minutes of his closing statements. Let's move on to the verdict, because I doubt we're going to get him any better arguments out of him in the rest of the 30 minutes he's got.
As they were before, I would make just one note that Mr. Brooks is now present.
This is the reading of the verdict.
And I will also advise that at 9:43
don't believe the jury deliberated all that long.
I was advised that the jury had reached verdicts in this matter, and without anything further, I'll have the jury brought out.
Your Honor, I don't
That kept going for 30 more minutes, indeed.
Address subject matter jurisdiction for the record has yet to be proven.
Your objections are noted.
Your objections are noted. I would like to tell you that this proceeding takes 25 minutes to read all of the charges against him. So we're not going to watch the whole thing, but you're going to get to see his reaction to at least the most serious charges.
I will not be addressing subject matter jurisdiction. Please bring the jury out.
Would it be proven for the record, Your Honor?
Is there anyone in the chat that doesn't know what the verdict is going to be?
Just a reminder to everyone that I do expect everyone in the courtroom to demonstrate appropriate decorum and courtesy as the verdicts are read and refrain from audible responses. Any disruptions may result in removal from the courtroom.
Your Honor, is that a tacit agreement not to address subject matter
Tacit agreement
for the record?
Jury's coming in. All rise, please.
I respectfully object to that ruling, Your Honor, and request the legal reconsideration of your ruling for the record.
Your requests are noted, sir. I will not be addressing that further.
For the record, may I respectfully reject that ruling and take exception to that ruling, Your Honor.
Yes, you can take exception to it if you want.
Judicial determination that you don't have to answer that question as a public servant, Your Honor. For the
You
record,
put some voodoo on her.
the legal or factual basis for your ruling, Your Honor.
She's explained to him numerous times. She's not there to explain the law to him.
Respectfully request a written judicial finding of fact and conclusion of law on this issue, Your Honor.
All your requests are noted for the record. They all are denied, sir. All rise. Jury's coming in.
For the record, may I respectfully move for an interlocutory declaratory appeal on this matter, Your Honor.
Not the court for that.
For the record, may I move to stay these proceedings until this instant matter is adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction?
Denied.
Based on what law or fact, Your Honor?
His suit looks nice.
Is that a
I like
tacit
the tie.
agreement that you don't have to answer that question? For the record, Your Honor, as a public servant. You don't have to address admiralty law or common law if this court is
Yes,
operating
clinically.
under admiralty law.
Well, that has been part of his argument that
Any of those
the laws
issues.
don't apply. That the
Thank you,
laws aren't
everyone.
valid.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you picked one among you to be the foreperson? All right, and I see it's juror number 11. Have you reached verdicts on all 76 counts?
Yes.
I want to point out the smile on her face because she knows this is over. She's like, I am so glad this is the last day of this.
All right, and I see it's juror number 11. Have you reached verdicts on all 76 counts?
Yes.
All right, would you please hand all of the forms to the bailiff?
This has been about a month. And remember, this is going on a year now. She would have had the case, pre-trial conferences, all that good shit. But this has been like a solid month of this trial specifically. 76 counts. It takes 25 minutes. We're going to watch the first few minutes here. The most serious counts are 6 counts of intentional homicide. There are 60 counts of reckless endangerment. He did have public defenders. It was right before the trial that they held several hearings about his ability to represent himself. He had a public defender early on. He specifically wanted to go to trial. I am pretty certain that there was no plea deal you could have offered him that he would have accepted. It was trial, and I don't think there was a lawyer willing to go to trial with
the
him.
verdict. Is it necessary that I have these shock devices on my ankles?
Yeah, you might try to run, motherfucker. I have seen people kill themselves during sentencings. Run out of the courtroom and jump off a balcony. It just happened like a couple of years ago. Prosecution incredibly stoic. I would say it's a look of competence. But I would say they as well are just happy to have it over with. The anticipation is killing me. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in Darrell Brooks's shoes at this moment. The anticipation is killing me. Does he know? Does he know? Does he know? Does he know he fucked himself? Does he really think he convinced somebody? So yeah, there was a grain of truth to the whole recall thing, but there wasn't an official recall. The throttle was not accused of doing what Brooks asserted it did. I do believe he tried to present it as evidence, and it that got adjudicated and struck down. Like, he wasn't allowed because the prosecution knew the claims he was making. So I would assume he did try to do it during the trial, and the judge ruled it inadmissible. I did my best to delay the commercials if you're not subscribed on Twitch. Make sure that you didn't miss anything. I didn't know it was going to take this long. So my apologies if you get hit with a commercial break at a rough point. That is a hell of a lot of paperwork. For those of you listening to the podcast, the judge is flipping through all of the goddamn paperwork, all of the 76 counts she's getting ready to read through.
That there are 76 signed verdicts
Yep.
and 76 unsigned verdicts. Which would be what I would expect. All right, I will read each one into the record. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information, dated this 26th day of October 2022, signed by the foreperson, juror number 11. If you find the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, answer the following question, yes or no. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 2 of the information. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes.
Burn in hell, you piece of shit.
Hey, you are to be removed right now. You will not do that. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 3 of the information. And I should state as to count 2, it was signed and dated by the foreperson.
Member of the gallery said, "Burn in hell, you piece of shit."
First-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon. Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 4 of the information. Dated this 26th day of October 2022, signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 5 of the information, dated today's date and signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 6 of the information, dated today's date, signed by the foreperson.
So that is guilty
First-degree
on
intentional
all
homicide.
6 of the most serious counts, intentional homicide.
Yes.
There are 76 counts in
We, the
total,
jury, find the
60
defendant,
reckless
Darrell E. Brooks,
endangerment counts.
guilty of first-degree
He was guilty
reckless
on
endangerment
all
safety, charged in count
76.
7 of the information, dated today's date and signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree recklessly endangered
There is
safety,
20 more
using a
minutes
dangerous weapon?
of her
Answer,
reading
yes.
guilty verdicts
We, the
against
jury,
this
find the
motherfucker.
defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as charged in count 8 of the information. Dated today's date and signed by the foreperson.
20 more minutes
Defendant
reading
commit
the
first-degree
charges
recklessly
against
endangering
him.
safety while using
Guilty
a dangerous weapon.
on every
Yes.
single charge.
We, the
all
jury,
76
find the defendant,
counts.
Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as charged in count 9 of the information.
So-
Dated today's date, signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree recklessly endangering safety while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as charged in count 10 of the information, dated today's date and signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree recklessly endangering safety while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty.
Those of you listening to the podcast, he has his head bowed in his hands. He's really not giving us anything.
Recklessly endangering safety while using a dangerous weapon. Yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first degree, recklessly endangering safety.
Pretty much the same
Dated today's date, signed by the
pose
person.
since
Did the
the
defendant commit first degree
second
recklessly
count was
endangering safety using a
read.
dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first degree, recklessly endangering safety, as charged in count 13 of the information. Dated today's date, signed by the fourth person. Did the defendant commit first degree, recklessly endangering safety while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first degree, recklessly endangering safety, as charged in count 14 of the information. Dated today's date, signed by the fourth person. Did the defendant commit first degree?
The prosecution looks to have like disdain on their face.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first degree, recklessly endangering safety, as charged in count 15 of the information. Dated today's date, signed by the fourth person. Did the defendant commit first degree, recklessly endangering safety while using a dangerous weapon? Answer,
I
yes.
mean, he did make their
We, the jury, find the defendant,
job
Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first degree, recklessly endangering safety.
far
as charged in 15
harder.
of the information. Dated today's date, signed by the fourth person. Did the defendant commit first degree, recklessly endangering safety?
So yeah, there is still another maybe 15 minutes of reading charges against him. Here is how the victims reacted after the reading of the verdict earlier today.
And thank you for joining us at 5. The jury's verdict was swift and it was clear.
Darrell Brooks guilty on all 76 counts in connection with the Waukesha Christmas parade tragedy. Brooks
believe
was
the sentencing
often
is in a couple
disruptive
weeks.
during his trial, but was silent as he listened to the verdict in the first count. He then put his head in his hands and stayed in that position as the verdicts were read on the other charges. The first 6 guilty verdicts pertain to the 6 people he killed: Bill Hospo, Leanna Owen, Jane Kullock, Jenny Sorensen, Tamara Durand, and Jackson Sparks.
Bruce Harrison has been covering the trial for us from day one. He has the details on how this all ended in court today and how prosecutors reacted.
We want to start, though, with reaction from the victims and their families. Our Mary Jo Ola gets us started. Mary Jo.
Susan, victims and their families have been in and out of this courthouse for the last 3.5 weeks following this trial closely, and we can only imagine how challenging this time has been for them. Soon after that guilty verdict was read, a few of them reacted publicly.
I want to first thank the prosecution team. They were the one that got us to this point.
I'm very happy with the verdicts and that, justice has been served today.
After nearly a month-long trial, the victims in the Waukesha Christmas parade stood in front of news cameras to say their piece.
We've been praying for this day for a long time.
Marshall Sorensen's mother, Virginia Sorensen, was killed while participating in the parade with the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies.
This morning, my
It was a
5-year-old daughter
dancing
came
granny.
and handed me this necklace with my mom's ashes in it, and she told me to take my mom with us for the sentencing. So she was with us today, and I just want to thank everyone for what they did today.
Tyler Pudliner was injured while playing the saxophone with the Waukesha South High School Concert Band.
It's been a difficult day. I know that this will give us healing. This is another step forward in this process. We've been resilient all the way through. One of the things that I've said so much throughout this is that we're stronger than him, and it's been proven today.
Families expressed gratitude to the district attorney, police, and community for rallying behind them.
It's been amazing to see how wonderful this community has been to pull together for all of those who were hurt that night.
One last thing, my mom always used to tell us when we were kids and our family that she always said, angels watch over you guys. So I just want to say angels watch over you guys.
Now, as you saw there is a sense of somber relief. Some of the victims encouraged the community tonight to turn on their blue lights. It's a reference to that show of unity across Waukesha that took place immediately after that Waukesha Christmas parade tragedy. Live in Waukesha.
Oh. He jumped his bell twice? I didn't know that. Burn in hell, you piece of shit was my favorite part of that. 2 counts of felony bell jumping and 1 count of battery. Was that what they were That might have been like what he was, because I think he had a warrant out for him. And it was why he was running. So it is a, it is not a death penalty state. He just got life in prison. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. There's no chance he's getting out. So there you have it. That and right wingers have latched on to this case for some odd reason. And they try to present it as a case of leftist violence, but this guy was a sovereign citizen asshole who clearly was fucked up in the head. But I know they like to frame it as like he was some kind of like BLM activist or some shit. 120 years minimum. So I don't know why they latched onto this case. I didn't want to be accused of not covering it. Anytime that they brought up, oh, what about the parade killer? What about him? Yeah, we watched that trial as well. We do the news here on the Troll Patrol, but all in all, I feel like that doing that story was exploitative.